So, welcome to this edition of 22nd Century Management with Ken. I have with me today, I'm very privileged to have with me Rick Lambert. He is an expert on our industry, and he is very much like I am a fan of A4 devices. Nice to have you on the show. You want to give us a little of your background, Rick?
Geez, introducing me as an expert. Now, I don't know how we go from there. Yeah, thanks for having me on, buddy. Congrats on what you're doing on all the different platforms. I think not enough people, brand themselves, share their message. So great job, Ken, on what you're doing. Sorry. So, I was once introduced as a consultant. Just a quick story for you. So I'm in San Antonio, and I'm talking to the elite Xerox salespeople, I guess, in the surrounding area. And the VP that introduces me says, "Hey, we got this guy, Rick Lambert. He's a Canadian guy, but he talks all over North America, to people selling copiers and office automation and stuff. And he's a consultant, and he's going to come in and tell us, what we need to do." And so as I took the microphone, there I am, big group of people. And I said, "Hey, thanks for introducing me as a consultant. But, do you guys, anybody have a definition of what a consultant is? Because too many people call themselves a consultant or an expert. Anyway, in this case, consultant." And I said, "Anybody got a good definition?" I remember there was a guy at the back of the room, Ken, and I still remember seasoned seller, I'll put it that way, based on his hairdo, and cowboy boots, the whole bit. He raises his hand. He says, "Yeah, a consultant," he says, "it's a guy from out of town." So, I laugh because, how possibly could anyone in your town know anything more than you know? So anyway, sorry, quick, I run two companies. One is called Sell-to-Win. We do used to call it motivational sales training events, and I think we still got a lot of oomph in our game. We've probably done, I'd say, over 800 paid events for the imaging channel, primarily the Xerox Corporation, which we're still proud to be a great partner on a global scale with them. And I don't do a lot of gigs at the trade shows. With all due respect, I think there's a lot of vendors there, and I try to focus on what'll move the needle from a soft skills standpoint, independent of product or service. But we still are very engaged at a global level in terms of where the industry's at, where it's going, working deeply with some of the apps that are now enabling the print devices, and really proud of the relationships we have, just as things go to cloud printing and security and all the newest things. So, and then on my digital marketing side, Ken, we have a division, great team that goes in and takes over the agents, dealers, you name it, does website, social media on a managed program for customers. So we're a sales and marketing organization. And I've got experts, though, on my team, put it that way. Yeah.
Okay. So I just have to, I don't know if you've heard this definition of expert, but an X is has-been, something from the past, and a spurt would be a drip under pressure.
Well, I'll tell you, there's an old saying, it probably hasn't made it down to you yet, but they say those who can do and those who can't teach. I don't know if you've heard that one. So I got my backup on that one. It was just before COVID. One of our clients, I broadcast them every month, and I said, "Look, rather than this month me talk about how to do it, why don't I just step on the ice and do it?" And so I literally traveled for a full day in the field with one of the top reps in the country. And he gave me his list of 30 accounts the night before, less than 24 hours. And we called it Canadians in Cars Making Cold Calls. And we had GoPro cameras in the car. It was all phone-based. But it was just hilarious how the conversation, the banter, and it turned out it was a great production. It was exclusive, in this case, to Xerox. But I'm hoping that based on my hit rate, they showed I still got a couple, games left in me anyway.
Well, and it's interesting because I first ran across you. You did a webinar for the BTA on LinkedIn, and how to LinkedIn to Win was the class you were teaching at the time. And I took that class, and it really opened my eyes and helped me level up my game on LinkedIn, because my profile wasn't very good. None of the things were the way they should have been. So I learned from you, and so I followed you since then. I appreciate you being on today. But we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to both of our hearts, and that is A4 product. I have railed for most of a decade now about the fact that dealers continually oversell equipment. And because I come from a service background, what a lot of dealers don't realize And we did an analysis when Wes McDonald and I were doing the flat rate challenge. And there was a case where in the same volume band, it cost more than 5 times as much to have the A3 device in that volume band as it did to have an A4 device. And the A4 device was much less to acquire. So from a TCO perspective, and from being able to sell a deal, make money in it, and still meet the clients, what their budget was, they could have made 3 or 4 times as much profit by going with the A4 device.
So, a couple pieces there, just as I unpack what you said. Wes McDonald and you do a great job. I'm all about creativity, innovation, doing the right thing, of course, for the customer at every turn, because inevitably it becomes a very small world when you make a mistake. And I think, whether it's A3 or A4, the people watching or the people selling, you got to do the right thing. And sometimes you got to put your own priorities aside because, it's the long game, right? I think just for our viewing audience, I don't know who's watching exactly, but, some people don't know what an A4 device is. And so if I may, maybe I could just explain
Sure.
in brief terms, you know what I mean, Ken? Because we never know. Yeah. And, we've got this new generation called Gen Z coming up. I've got 2 of them live with me, my kids. And they wouldn't know, what. Anyway, A4 in simple terms, if you're a little loose on it, is basically a device, in simple terms again, that can't print 11 by 17. And that's the easiest way I explain it to people. There are, of course, other things, finishing options, meaning stapling and folding and all those kinds of things. But in short, I would argue that that's probably the definition. And you give a scenario there where the rep was overselling, and I'm very sensitive because I'm a sales guy myself, right? And so that's why I said you got to do the right thing for the customer. And I know a lot of the calculations from a math standpoint may justify an A4, they may justify an A3, depending on your cost per impression tends to be lower in an A3. What we found though is that, and we're exposed to, like, we manage right now over 100 dealers' websites and communication. Okay, so we're social media, we're doing the campaigns, email. So I think I got a decent grasp of what the fish are biting on, we'll call it. And I think that, we launched a program recently called Selling A4 to Win. And I mentioned that because, there's an old saying, right? There are those that make things happen. There are those that watch things happen. And then there are those that say, what happened? You know what I mean? And I think this A4 thing. So anyway, we walked this product to market a little over a month ago. We've already had a bunch of people through it. Feedback's great. And yet what's interesting, Ken, is I've had a couple of tenured sellers. And by tenured, I mean they've been in the industry for 20 years, right? They, like you and I, have grown up. It's been a great business. And I think they took a little offense to, some of the A4 messaging because it goes against the grain of what they've always done. And so, for me, whether it's the calculation of the math and the gross profit or whatever, it's got to be right for the customer. And the only reason I'm a big supporter of A4 is because I think in today's marketplace, we all know that there's probably been a dip in many cases in print volumes, digitization, automation, to the cloud, all this stuff, right? I just think, I'll use a baseball analogy because I know you're American, but when you have a pitcher on the mound, he's got more than one pitch. And, you can't maybe throw A3 every time. It depends on the batter. And sometimes you got to change it up versus a competitor, whatever, and pitch A4. So I just, for what it's worth, I'm not 1,000% A4 every time. I think there's absolutely a play for it. And I think there's a huge, huge opportunity for those to get on the horse quick.
Well, and I agree with you. And I'm not anti A3 because there are places and volumes where it behaves right. But
yep.
what a lot of dealers never look at is the performance. And you could say that if we start up here, and this is the zero volume, our highest cost on any machine is going to be there. And then it drops down and curves off almost logarithmically. Well, where you see that curve start to change depends on the device. The A4 devices, in the low volume bands, they drop off very, very quickly. The A3 devices in general, the higher volume, higher speed machines, typically need to be 25 to 40,000 pages before they get down where they're really prime. And what started me on this, I'll just a little background on it. I was doing some analysis when I worked for Sharp, and I looked at BEI data, and I was looking at a particular model. It was a 50-page a minute, black and white. There were 4,000 of them in the field, and 3,000 of them were doing less than 5,000 pages a month. So that's a huge disparity. Now, here's the interesting thing: it was the cost for parts and labor on that at less than 5,000 was a penny 5. That's cost.
That's your dealer cost. Yep.
Yeah. So you need to be at 3 cents to get to not quite where you should be for parts and labor. And then you have to add toner. So that means you need to get to about 4.5 cents a copy. Now, in a digital world, on a black and white 50-page a minute, how many dealers are getting 4.5 cents a click?
Yeah. Very, very, very rural areas.
Yeah. And so that's what flagged it to me. And I'll relate an experience I had with the dealer. And again, it's just about not matching the equipment right. I had a dealer that had bought 6 of Konicka's 60-page a minute color devices. And, they bought them without a plan. And so the first thing they had to do was start selling them. They sold them to mom and pop print shops. They call me up. They want me to help make them whole on service, tell them what they can do to fix it. I look at it, and they're running 3,000 pages a month. And I said, the only thing you can do to fix it is cut the power cord. Because there is no way, that machine doesn't run well. And so that's why I am a fan of making sure that we right size the equipment for the customer.
So, I think they're the best in the industry, a group called Nexera, and, Wes McCarter, he has the data, and it's a global, he can cone down. I think they provide tremendous insight to a dealer in terms of fact-based education. And we've actually got Wes in our Selling A4 to Win program, speaking to the straight facts on what's going on across, and, just before we go too far, just if I may, like, a lot of people see me, Rick, speaker guy or marketing guy or whatever, right? I'm cutting a video on a deserted island this weekend. You probably didn't see that one. Anyway, but I come from my first job. I thought I was going to be an NHL hockey player. I was drafted by Edmonton Oilers. That was my dream. Anyway, I ended up fast forward playing a year in the minors, Ken, and I was selling Xerox copiers. I had to learn the QWERTY keyboard, the typewriters at the time, right? Sold typewriters. And so I come from the streets and commercial territory, major accounts, production. In my last assignment, I left Xerox and I went to work for a conglomerate at the time called Icon, and I was a core VP for one of their 9 core centers in Canada. We had about 30 sales reps, about 30 techs, a decent size of 30 million, we were roughly. So I had profit and loss, P&L responsibility. So all the math you're talking about, I've seen those spreadsheets, right? And the game was always not so much the hardware, it was the post-sale, because that's where you win or lose. And we used to, in fact, budget our dealership. This may sound crazy today, but we used to budget for 5 to 10% loss on the front end because we knew we'd make it up in the back end. But we had to be right on what product was placed in what environment. And I, too, we placed 60-page a minutes. I was a Sharp dealer at one time, and we placed 60-page a minute machines in print environments because they're production. And they were production, all right. They were production for us. So, it comes back to, I think not enough people do. Like, we work with a lot in the telecom space, and they talk a lot about what they call usage prospecting. And it's not needs prospecting, it's usage prospecting. So you could I remember I sold a copier one time to a organization, and they were doing like 25,000 impressions a month, but they did 22 of them on that one. You with me?
Yeah.
As a service leader, which you were, you pull your hair out because no wonder, like, the burnt toast is coming out the end of the thing. You can't, so.
Yes, you do have to look at the usage pattern, and I have been in situations like that, and you may not know this about me, but I started in this business when I started in the copier business. I was the owner of a dealership.
Yeah,
I had no background. I used to walk down the street with a picture of a copier with a brochure, sell copiers. Okay, and you want to talk about a tough selling process, but I didn't have the money in my dealership for inventory and demos. If I did a demo, I took it to a client's office and gave client free toner.
Yeah.
So I understand the challenges of selling and then walking down the street and doing it as well. But the key thing is it goes back to trying to do what's right for the dealership and right for the customer.
Yeah.
And I think that part of it, and this is my personal opinion, I don't know how you feel about it. I think part of it is the compensation model is broken. We tend to pay them to do what's bad for the dealership. Because if they can make more money and put more money in their pocket, they will sell the biggest possible machine and they will discount service to do it. So at this point in time, they've stuck it to service from two different directions because they sold them a machine that's not going to run well, and then they've given away the profit in the process.
Yeah.
And it's just bad for the dealership every which way. It's good for the dealer. I mean, for the sales rep, but not for anybody else.
And, I don't know, I can't speak specifically to each dealer, obviously, but I think the more aware the sales leader is of the profitability or their lack of post-sale, because you're absolutely right. I remember we switched a copier one time at a local theater. And my buddy that sold these like, yeah, we sold him a new copier at such and such. The technician was, thank heavens, because it was having problems. He said, yeah, and we sold them a bigger one. And so the problem was that it didn't have enough volume to start, and the rep sold them a bigger one. But look, I don't think it's any secret, right? Like each dealer's got quotas with the OEM, right? Hardware, right? Consumables, and that's a factor. Although I would just say, if you're a salesperson watching right now, like your customers have short memories for the good things, but long memories when it's not a good thing. And the best reps I've seen, and I think I've seen the best ones in North America, they are very, very transparent with their customers, and they always take the customer side, and almost to the point where it drives you, internally, because they're fighting so hard for the customer. But that's why the customer wants them. They want an advocate. Anyway, look, A4's, our program today, I think it's called The Rise of A4. And I think I go back to that baseball pitcher analogy, Ken. Like, I called my training company Sell to Win, okay, not sell to participate. And I think not enough reps right now, sales organizations, I'll call it, are thinking of that A4 pitch when it's appropriate, because so many dealers are just coming in, RFPs, RFQs, down the street transactions, a typical SMB deal. And I would just challenge the listeners right now. Have you got, two options for the customer? Because the guy once told me in Louisiana, I was doing a live event down there. He says, Ricky, I always put two options minimum in my proposals, because if I don't, it's them against me. But if I put two in, it's them against me and me. Right? So recently on LinkedIn, which I know you and I are both big fans of. And by the way, if you're not on LinkedIn, like Ken talked about the picture of the copier in his t-shirt, that's your LinkedIn profile today. But anyway, I saw a picture a dealer posted recently on LinkedIn. They just won a big RFP or Q, whatever, at a school. And he was setting up the machines. It was a 63 unit hit. Okay. And I was looking at the machines in the picture, and I thought, isn't that neat? And I was going to call the guy on the side and say, hey, do you mind if I use the picture for my A4 program? And Ken, it was, how many MFPs do you think were in the 63 unit win he had? How many, because he had a picture of them all set up.
2.
No, you're okay, but a little, but 5 of 6. Now, if we go back 5 years, 10, you with me? Like that would have been A3, 20 page a minute up. But I recorded a video last week for a company. Like they got all the capabilities now, the apps, right? To cloud, the new security. That's if you're. By the way, I mentioned that. Sorry if I wander a bit, but I mentioned that Canadians in cars. My lead strategy, by the way, when I was prospecting, in the car with the gentleman that had his territory, right to the top every time. Owner, right to the top. How can I get a hold of him? Got his or her cell, whatever. Anyway, it was about security, not about saving money, and I think A4 provides a tremendous opportunity right now, if you know the customer's volume, to save them money, make yourself money, and you just got to make sure that back end is the volume alignment is proper for
Well, yeah, and I would agree 100% with that. And in fact, to just go to your point about going in with two proposals, West and I talk a lot. In fact, I pretty much get a reference in every time about Seth Godin's Purple Cow. And if you go in with the same offer that your competition has, same product, in a lot of cases, the same manufacturer, what happens is we have this race to the bottom. But if you go in with a proposal that is different than what the competition brought in, so you had an A3, they had an A3, but you also have an A4, and the A4 looks better, financially, and it almost always will. What you have now is a Purple Cow. You have something that you're not competing against that A3. You have something that's unique in the sales process. And if you understand the sales methodology and you understand the reasons why, and if a customer says, but I need the speed, I would ask him this question. This is my pet question for this is, would you buy a Porsche to drive on a go-kart track? The answer is no, we wouldn't, because it doesn't run well. And that's what happens with high volume machines and low volume environments is they don't run well.
Yeah.
And so you can have the conversation and educate your customer. And I love what you said about it, always doing what's right for the customer. And say, listen, I'd love to sell you a bigger, faster machine, but that's not what you need. Now, honestly, I'm not going to make as much money in this deal, but I'm going to sell you what you need. And if you haven't, if for the people in the audience, if you haven't read the book, Customers for Life, I would throw that out as a book you should read. It was written by Carl Sewell, who is one of the most successful luxury car dealers in the United States. But he talked about doing what was right for the customer and making that right. And look at what would that customer buy over the course of their lifetime. And he worked out the math when he wrote the book the first time. It was about $250,000 over the course of their lifetime. That would have been back in the 70s. Okay, so if you treat somebody like that, if you see the total value of the customer, and you always do what's best for the customer, the odds become really good that you don't have to A, be the cheapest, and B, you don't have to worry about the customer trying to throw you out because they know that you act in their best interest.
Yeah, and to your speed, there's questions that we coach, because speed may come up. Hey, I'm coming off a 55 page per minute, copier MFP, and I'm going to drop down to 42 pages on this A4. And, I think that some questions that people may want to think about is like, may I ask, like, how often are you right at the device waiting for the output? Right? Old school thinking is I go up to copier, put originals in feeder, hit go, and wait till it's done. Right? New school is I send a device. Now I understand, follow me print and all these things. You go to the device and pick it up. But the speed is really should be in the customer's criteria, not even in the top three. And you may say, what's in the top three, Rick? I would say number one is security. And if you've got devices installed in your competitor's base that I would say that are more than 3 years old, I mean, the manufacturers have already put out warnings that their devices are susceptible. And we did a whole program for dealers on how to sell security, like how to basically create deals. So I'd say security, number one. Number two would be cloud integration. That's the way everything's going. And, number three might be some of the workflow apps like and around it maybe. But again, I'm saying those are three to get away from speeds and feeds, because if I hold up to you, back to your car analogy, I hold you up a brochure of a Hyundai and I hold up a brochure of a Mercedes. They both have comparable speed features, but there's a reason someone buys or sees value more in the Mercedes. Anyway, we migrate, but in this program I built, and I'm trying to promote it, but I'm not trying to promote it. I'm just trying to explain why A4. I think the other thing too is the rep selling A4 has to be aware of how they're going to be attacked by the A3 seller. So, one of the things that we coach a lot in our programs is, it's easy to play a game. Like I come from hockey background. It's easy to play non-contact, meaning you don't get hit. Okay. But as soon as there's checking involved, now there's more resistance, and that's called the customer in sales. or a competitor. And I think, before we march out of this program, you're going to say, hey, Ken and Rick said we got to do A4. Let's do A4. You got to be prepared for what's coming over the net at you, such as can't handle the volume. You're going to get more service calls, right? Because they're going to hang on to what they got. And you got to be ready to go offense, defense. And reps got to be prepared. So you can talk competently, Ken, because you understand it. But if we dial it back to that Gen Z or millennial that's in their 20s and maybe sold 4, devices in their life, they take a few incoming and they're gone. They can't handle the here's another thought on why I think A4. There was this thing that came out, and I don't know if they've got it down by you, but it's called document management. Have you got that down by you too? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So we do a lot of work with dealers. I speak facetiously on training them to sell document management. Basically workflow automation, digitization, digital transformation. And so I was talking to a great guy, owns a very successful dealership, came from copier business. Now he's got the full stack up into IT and all that. Anyway, he said, Rick, we just did a deal at a law firm and we implemented a document management solution with the copier, we'll call it. And the volumes were like a waterfall drop off because they didn't need to go to paper. And so I think if you asked 10 customers you're trying to sell to, do you think your print volumes are going to go up or go down over the next 3 to 5 years? In an SMB market, and no niche examples, there's always niche examples, but they would say probably trend downward. And it just, again, you gotta set the bed up for them to go into. And I think it's so much more than a hardware and cost discussion. It's just, now look at this, and I'm just going by your hairdo and mine, Ken, but you and I have been through how many rotations of centralize, decentralize, no, centralize, decentralize, right? Like centralized meaning, for those that may not have been around that long, centralized means you go to one big unit because only one cost of hardware, right? Lower cost for impression. So centralize, everybody go to the one big copier. Then people say, oh, we got to sell some more stuff. Oh, let's decentralize, go to departmental level. And I think this A4 thing is just a newer version of that. That's all.
And it's interesting because West and I talk a lot about selling A4, and we talk about managed print services as well. And the two things, managed print services, the reason managed print services has not really taken off in like it could have and should have is because when you truly manage print services, what happens is the output goes down. And for a traditional click-based service department, they don't want the volume to go down. They want the volume to go up. So it doesn't work well. But when you combine all of it together, then what's going to happen is volume is going to start going down. We've seen the trend even before the pandemic. We won't talk about what happened during the pandemic, but before the pandemic, the trend was down and down and down. And on top of that, the price trend was down and down on service. And I make the point a lot that it's really hard to make money when you're at double or nothing for 0 clicks. We've got to do some things to change what we're doing. And becoming more proactive in selling A4 is a huge piece of being able to do that and to change the game a little bit. And especially if you're the only person that brings it into the deal, then the price per click is going to become irrelevant. Most of the time dealers sell on TCO. So you can go into a deal against an A3 and in a let's say under 10, especially under 10K with an A4 device, and your TCO, you can be less than the A3 device, and you can make twice the money the A3 dealer would make in the deal at the same time. So you're good for the customer, good for you. Yeah.
And look, I will be very transparent. In fact, I had a video on LinkedIn talking about how a couple people winced at, why is Rick talking about A4? Like, I thought that guy was our copier coach guy. And remember, you want to do the right thing for the customer, but you want to win the deal. And, I'm simply suggesting that, you can't argue with the facts. I mean, we trained more than 3,000 sales reps to sell managed print through LMI Solutions, former company in the industry, right? They gave us a great opportunity to white label our managed print training. Boom, walked it out to you name the big dealers. They went through our training. And you're so right. I think what you and Wes talk about in terms of, I would call it the packaging of it, including the new technology and the methodology to manage, I think it's got a lot of sex appeal and sizzle and appetite right now by the end user, to say the least, right? Fixed cost. But I just think that if you look at as simple as monitoring the user activity and restrictions, like there's basic things, not just COVID, that are driving print. Here's a stat for you. It came out of a guy that runs a national service network. He said the moment the staff in organizations are notified that their print activities are being monitored, immediately the volumes they see dip by 10%. Immediately. Forget COVID. Like the technology itself, go to cloud, user monitoring, user access restrictions, right? All that is in my opinion putting wind in the sails of A4. And so again, if I haven't said it enough, I'm not saying A3 is bad. I'm just saying when you show up at the starting line, like show up to win and figure out how to shuffle the cards, which I think you're saying is good for the customer, but you win the deal.
Yeah. And I'm not a fan of making it just good for the customer. It needs to be good for the sales rep. It needs to be good for the dealership.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying in all of this is that so many times the only person that wins in an A3 transaction is the sales rep. And I think that, by focusing on what's good for the customer, what's good for the dealer, and good for the sales rep, we start to create a model where A4 becomes a more important part of the mix. Again, you're always going to have production print. You're always going to have people that run high volume. Those places, they're going to need the A3 device. I'm not saying go away and stop selling it. I'm just saying that we want to make sure that we right size it for the customer and for the dealership. That's
agreed.
Yeah, and that's why you and I are having this conversation, because you and I are very much on the same page about this. So I know you have your A4. What's the name of the program again?
It's called Selling A4 to Win. And
Okay.
we just launched it, and it's basically because we can't keep doing what we've been doing. I know that sounds tired, but if I go to a great quote from Wayne Gretzky, all-time scoring leader in the National Hockey League, he says, don't skate to where the puck is skate to where it's going. And look, it's not easy today for a new person to sell an MFP A3 or A4, right? Think about it. Things were less complicated when we started. You had 10-bin sorter, 20-bin sorter, right? Do you want staple? Reduction enlargement. You want that. It's complicated now, but I think the chassis and the engine is really what we're talking about. And I highly think that the people that will be most successful will be those that use A4 as an offensive strategy in their competitors' accounts, because most dealers right now are sitting on their A3 products. If they're not due on their lease, we'll call it, they're not 3 years of 5 or wherever they're at, that sweet spot. And I'd use it as an attack strategy if I was in the field. In fact, that's what we coach right now. Your own base, you figure out what you want to do, because there'll be dealer owners like you, Ken, wincing when I was in my old position, going, no, we don't want to, we don't want to reduce our stream out of that account, but hopefully you're stacking up with other products and services that can compensate, like unified communications, document management, all those things that we talk about. But it's not the only way, but it is that way.
Well, and and I use the analogy, it's just one more tool in your tool belt.
Totally.
Because the more tools you have to attack a prospect, and we'll use it right now, we'll say a prospect, the more you have to offer, and the more attractive you can make your offering, obviously, the more opportunities it opens up for you. And for those that have not used Rick's training, I went through his, like I said, his LinkedIn. I think, was it LinkedIn to Win, or I forget what it was.
Sounds like you really had a good time. Yes, you went through a few of them, but LinkedIn to Win was the first one. And kudos to you. You've been around. You know your way around the restaurant, we'll say, and you went through it, and I was really proud to have you through it as a graduate.
Well, and what I'm going to say is Rick's training, and Rick's not paying me this. I don't get a commission on what any business he might get out of this. I don't do business that way. I talk to people I believe in, and I talk about subjects I believe in. But the training for your sales rep is really important. I am a huge fan of training. I think that anybody, when they stop learning, starts to die in the role that they're in. Sometimes I think that happens in their lives as well. You start to decay if you're not learning. So I think his training is amazing. For those that don't know, I teach service management for the copier industry. And I came out, I retired from Konica. I'd spent 18 years working with manufacturers, and I realized that nobody was teaching service managers how to be service managers. They'd send them to all the tech schools in the world, but nobody sent them to real training on how to succeed. But it's the same thing with your sales team, same thing with your sales manager. These individuals need to be trained so that they can be successful. Elsewise you're just sending them out to be slaughtered like lambs.
Well, look at, you and I are aligned that way. Although a viewer may say, which I hear quite often, hey, our OEM's got that course. Okay.
No.
Well, here's my thing. And I've got OEMs as clients, distributors as clients. So I'm very respectful. All I'm saying is that, if each paragraph and each strategy includes the manufacturer name and product in every pitch and angle, and we are product independent, and because of our exposure, I try to say, look, this is what's working right now. This is what's working right now for this huge dealer we have in New York City. This is what we're doing. This is how we're putting the bait. This is how we're casting. This is where we're placing it with this value proposition to this position in the organization. You mentioned LinkedIn, and I joke that that's the new Rolodex. It's the new website. We speak to MBA. I do a ton of work outside of the imaging space, we'll call it. We're now coaching MBAs. One of North America's top schools called Ivy Business School, where I live in London, Ontario, Canada. And we're coaching them on the concept of personal branding. And guess what? The launch pad is LinkedIn. And I know we're off A4, but to sell A4, whatever you got, people buy you. They need to, trust you, or, and the edge. There's a guy I follow that sells glass doors, and he tells me that Keith Dobbin, and I highly recommend people follow him. He says that when he meets with a customer, he has such an advantage over his competition because the customer feels like they've already met him, and they hear him talking about how to do this or why to do that. Not promotional stuff, but I think whether it's A4 or whatever it is, the same way there's trends in the imaging industry, there's absolute trends in the sales and marketing space. And the sooner people realize that they have to start to work for the name of the person on their business card and not the company, they'll do better for both. We're building a whole new program for a scanning division of a company. And, I said to them, step one, we got to get your people in a digital outfit. Like, they can do everything they want from a sales standpoint, A4, whatever it is you want to sell. But I think today's customers looking at you through a screen first, if not through most of the sales cycle. And you got to be on your game. And, not to slip it in, but that's why we're launching, digital selling to win boot camp coming up too. But anyway.
Well, I'm a huge fan of that. It's interesting because in my service management class, I have a whole course on social media for the company and for the service department. And I talk to them about the ways they should be using YouTube, the way they should be using Google reviews, and all of these things. And it's amazing how many of them, when they look at Glassdoor, they find things they didn't know existed, or they look at Google reviews and they find disgruntled former employees posting in there, and all of these things, because they're not paying attention to it. And if you're not paying attention to your social media, you really need to get started with that. I'm sure Earl Everson, Rick.
Yeah.
And he's an example of somebody that has got personal branding down. I mean, you can't. I had him on the show a couple of weeks ago, And you can't go on LinkedIn for the most part without seeing him live about something. He was live about something this morning. I don't even remember what he was live about, but he was live on there. But that's an example of somebody that's starting to really leverage technology. I went through a speaking program, and we're gone a little long, but that's all right. I'll talk about this. And it was by a guy named Pete Vargas, and he talked about the power of stages and why it's important to learn to get on stages to get your message out. And one of the stages is social media. And it's a platform. I'm not big about, and like you were talking about, it's about branding. It is about conveying information. I like Gary Vee's statement about you give before you ask. So it's you provide information, you educate your clients. There's a lot of things you can do on social media that is not salesy. I think sales is more of an in-person thing, but you want them to understand you and understand that you're looking out for you. And there's just so many things that are so important.
Well, let me tie it back to our A4. You mentioned the techs, okay? What if you had a technician, one that is camera friendly, and you ask them why they, as the mechanic, would suggest an A4 product in these types of scenarios? Oh, and then you play that social media website. No, by the way, it's a link when the salesperson is going to meet and propose the A4. I'm just saying this is the connectivity I'm seeing in sales and marketing. And I think a lot of times, you've got people that are great at sales, and then you got people that are great at marketing. But candidly, I think most dealers, they still haven't put the two together. And one's going to this town, the other's going to that town. Sales guy or lady says, these messages don't make sense to my SMB customer doing 7,200 impressions a month. But they'll get it. The good ones have got it. The good ones are getting it. And we're like a dozer going through right now. And but again, there are people, like I said at the beginning, make things happen, watch what happens, and those that ask, what happened? How come whether it's safe or marketing, whatever.
Well, and so I'm going to take your thing one notch farther. So imagine not only do you have the service guy talking about that, and it's on your YouTube channel, and it's on your. And by the way, for those that don't know, YouTube is the second biggest search engine on the planet. That on your website and on your YouTube channel, you have customer testimonials for customers that moved from A3 to A4, and they talk about how much better it runs and how much they like it, how much they appreciate it. Or you get a response from a customer talking about how good your sales rep was. Zoom call them, ask them if you can record it, and then have that on your website and on your YouTube channel and share that in social media. There's so much power in that. So the digital selling is a huge piece of.
We got to get you on our digital marketing team at Into Communications. You're well qualified there.
Well, I'm a firm believer in it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have my podcast on LinkedIn and YouTube on my podcast engine.
What's funny is, you're talking about digital connections and all. How did you and I meet?
Digitally. I don't think we've ever met in person.
I've never met Earl Everson. Watch what he does. A lot of great messages. The game's all about, I believe anyway now, it's about being top of mind at point of need.
Yeah.
When I think I need a new printer, and I'm not talking the guy that posts the brochure covers, right? That guy or ladies, or we got the deal of the week. But the person that's, we all fast forward through commercials when we watch TV programs that are recorded, but and that's what people I think do on social media. But when the show they want to watch comes, they'll stop and listen. Like I think you post a ton of educational content. You got a great mix of inspirational quotes. You've got, thought provoking. You're doing these things, and it takes a bit of effort. But I just think these digital bricks in your wall you're building will last for a long, long time.
Well, and that's so true, because these videos that you make once, and I have, for those that don't know, I have a travel channel as well. And I have what I would consider a very bad video on my travel channel where I interviewed a guy in Mexico. He was on his cell phone walking around showing the accessibility in a resort because I couldn't get there and he was there. And so we just did it that way. The interesting thing, that view is averaging 2 views an hour and has for the last 6 months.
Of course.
Evergreen content. And so when you make things that answer customers' questions and provide education, people will find you and they will keep coming back and keep looking for more. So just feed them, give them the things that will help them, and they will remember you. I go back to one last thing here. One of the first books I read was J. Conrad Levinson's Guerrilla Marketing. And he talked about, and social media is the ultimate guerrilla marketing tool, because he talked about getting in front of your customers on a regular basis. And, he talked about at that time radio and not advertising, but being a guest on somebody's show. Well, to the extent that you start to really engage your digital marketing, you start to be, as Rick said, top of mind. They'll think of you when they're thinking about, needing a copier or wanting.
The biggest challenge. The biggest challenge people have, and we're doing a ton with personal branding and coaching sales teams how to use LinkedIn. The number one question we get is, "What do I post?" It seems natural to you, Ken, because you've been up on the water skis for a while, right? And that's where we're helping people now. Like, I saw that gap, and I just try and stay ahead of the gaps, right? And that's what we're helping now. Like, even how to shoot a selfie sales video, like as basic as that. In fact, one of the OEMs has hired us in October to go down and teach their top sales reps throughout the United States how to shoot selfie videos at a training course for their products that will then that day, everyone will leave with 3 to 5 videos, and boom, we're going to have a great big, you with me? So you guess it's not as easy as I think people know they got to do it. Same with A4. They know it's an opportunity. The question is, like, how do I take those steps? And with all due respect, I think getting a third party involved, whether it's you, Wes McDonald, whoever that has been through the jungle before, I think can shortcut them to quicker and more successful ends. But to try it yourself based on reading something out of a free magazine article, I don't think the best content's for free. Just that would be my other little thing, by the way. But anyway.
All right. Well, we've gone a little longer than I usually go, but it's been a great conversation, Rick. We're going to say goodbye to the audience. If you'll stick around for just a second, Rick, we'll chat afterwards. But thanks, everybody, for being here. If you're watching it on the replay, what I can tell you is there'll be links to Rick's information in the show notes on the podcast. It'll be in the description on LinkedIn. It's in the information here on, it'll also be in the description on YouTube. So you'll be able to get a hold of Rick, reach out to him, have a conversation. He's a great guy, and he's really helpful.
Thanks for having me, buddy. Thanks for having me. Probably a little too late to suggest they play it on speed 1.5, but anyway.
Yeah, go a little faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. And Giovanni, thank you much. I appreciate that well done comment. Very, very nice of you.